Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Sam Tom here. We are continuing our trek through the Phantom of the Opera movies. 6 official movies with one video. There we go. One video going up on my Patreon about another movie that's not a Phantom of the Opera movie, but kind of sort of is. But today we're talking about the 1989 Robert Englund Phantom of the Opera. I did not know this thing existed. Let's talk a little behind the scenes real quick. When I was planning this thing out, I was originally only going to watch 3. The classic silent film, which I thought I owned. The Hammer version, which I owned. And the 2004 version, which I owned and am a big fan of, as I've mentioned in other videos. The version I owned was not the 1925 silent version, but actually this one. So then that one got added to the mix, but I still wanted to watch this one, so I found it on YouTube. And at that point, I was like, well, I had this plan to take 3 days of my calendar. I don't really want it to take 4 days. So maybe I'll just do one big video with all 4 of them. And then I'll add in a couple other movies to make up for it. So 3 videos became 1 video. But then as I was looking up information about the different versions and looking up trivia and facts and stuff like that, I saw some comments about this version with Robert Englund, who played Freddy Krueger. And I was just like, I gotta watch that one. I gotta find that one. So I will say that one was very difficult to track down. It was not well received, and it is not very popular. It's not on any of the major streaming services, at least with not some add-ons. So I don't want to say too much, but it was hard to find, hard to track down. But it's very different than all the rest of them. It's very unique. It takes place somewhat in the modern day, but not only for the bookends. Most of it still takes place back when the other versions do. And it's, some of these are, like this one is pretty well considered a horror film. These ones kind of downplay the horror element and play up the romance element. This one, I would consider this a full-on slasher. It's much darker, much gorier, plays much more into the horror elements. But let's get to the board first. So as I've said in all my videos, I'm tracking the ages of the love interests. Not that I have a problem with a couple that has an age gap if they are consenting adults, but that's not always the case, and we're coming up on the worst one here. But let's talk about this one. Robert Englund at the time of filming was 42, not the oldest, but certainly not the youngest Phantom. Christine was 26, so on the older side of the Christines that we've had. Definitely an adult, right? Not a teenager, not just past a teenager. Definitely an adult. Still a young adult, but an adult. And Raoul was 30. So a 4-year age difference between Raoul and Christine, a 16-year age difference between the Phantom and Christine, which is a lot, but, it's not twice her age. So, not the worst. Not the most egregious. We'll get to my rankings later on. So, right away, this is the only Phantom movie to actually have some paranormal, supernatural elements. And that is that in this version, Eric, before his disfiguration, made a deal with the devil. He made a deal with Satan that the world would know him for his music. He would get famous for his music. But, deal with the devil, it's going to go wrong. The cost of that deal was that they could only love him for his music. The world could only love him for his music. And so the devil disfigured his face. Now, I got to say right away, I think Eric got a raw deal. Not just because his face was disfigured, but because nobody knows his music. It got buried and deleted and destroyed. And you'd think with that kind of deal, you'd at least be world renowned, right? But no, it just like people think it's pretty good when they hear it, but it's not like he's a world famous name or anything. So, raw deal. Satan, do better on your deals. We start, as I said, in modern times. We get Christine Day. They changed several of the names in this. And she is a modern musical student. I think they say she's at Juilliard. And she finds this old music that was written by the Phantom back in the day. And auditions on it. And during the audition, there's like something falls from almost like what happened to Carlotta in most versions of Phantom, where something falls on her. Something falls on her, and it travels back in time, and then we get the main story. Then at the end, we jump back to modern times. We'll get there later. But we have what I put down as the great music paradox. This happens a lot in movies, where you have characters in the story talking about something, whether that's the music or a joke, right? Or someone's right, they're talking about it, and it's supposed to be the most amazing thing, right? Maybe it's someone's appearance, right? She's the most beautiful woman, blah, 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 blah. But the problem then is that you are then saying that whoever, wrote the music for your movie is the greatest composer of all time. Because this song that you're saying is the greatest music of all time had to have been written by them. And so it's this paradox, when it's a joke, you can get away with it by just cutting in right at the punchline, and then everybody laughs, and oh my gosh, that's the funniest joke I've ever heard. And you don't actually have to have the audience hear the joke, so you don't actually have to come up with the joke. But like here, we hear the music, and like, it's fine music, but it's not like, oh my gosh, this is the most beautiful music I've ever heard in my life. Not greatly executed, but you're kind of stuck. I wrote crazy how that piano sounds like a violin. So when she's auditioning, she's got her accompanist playing the piano, but in the soundtrack, it's like an orchestra playing with her, which I don't know. Maybe there was an orchestra there, but for auditions, you wouldn't have an orchestra playing with you. So odd conflict between the soundtrack and what was on screen. So then we get the time jump, and within our time jump, we have a flashback within our flashback. The face reveal for the Phantom happens very early in this, and this is the only version that we've looked at that does not have a mask. So instead of wearing a mask, he patches his face together with different cuts of skin taken from his victims. But the artificial skin that he adds over time, and then he blends it with makeup and stuff so that he looks normal. But the skin that he takes doesn't last very long, so he's constantly having to kill more people to get more skin. As I said, much more of a horror movie, much gorier, much more like a slasher. No Raoul. I was confused for a while until I realized, I'm sorry, I keep putting my face out of frame. I realized that they changed his name to Richard in this. So there's a character named Richard, and we'll just get right to it. He's ranked number 1 solely because I didn't write down any negative things about him. And when I was going through and ranking all of these after I had watched all of them, I couldn't remember a single thing about Richard. I couldn't even tell you what he looked like. I cannot remember him at all. So I don't think he has a very big part to play. But the fact that I didn't write down any instances of him bossing Christine around and treating her like his property automatically puts him at number 1. Now, maybe that happened and I missed it, or I didn't write it down and I forgot it. So, certainly, that can be changed in the future. But at this point in time, the only Raoul to not boss her around like a piece of property gets number 1 ranking from me. Oh... Talked about the deal with the devil. There are more scenes that take place outside of the opera than in the other versions. Specifically, the Phantom does a lot of stuff outside of the opera house. Which, in this version, there is the scene where he takes Christine to the graveyard, and she doesn't know that it's him. And then there's the fight in the graveyard. But he's still just with Christine at that point. But like in this movie, at one point he tracks down a critic that gave Christine a bad review, and he kills him. At another point, he goes and finds some ladies of the night that he uses to fulfill some of his desires. And I think there are a couple other things that happen, but just he is outside of the opera house more than we've seen in any other version. And I think part of that comes from the fact that he can disguise his face to look like a normal face. He's not wearing a mask like the other ones. So don't think that's necessarily better or worse. It's just different. It's a distinction that the other ones don't have. The sewers in this look like sewers, whereas in some of the other ones, especially this one, they look like, mansions by comparison. So again, that was interesting. At one point, Christine shoots the Phantom. And then after that, he still is trying to force her to stay with him. And it's like, yeah, the other Phantoms were all pretty clueless about how much she hated him. And like, even after they knew that she was scared of him, right? There's the line about like, fear can turn to love, right? Like they thought that they could convince her over time to love him. But the problem was just that she was scared, right? But like in this one, she's trying to kill you, dude. Like, take a hint. Let her go. Move on. My goodness. That's kind of like, it's kind of an issue with all of these that I haven't really talked about yet. But like, why Christine? Depending on the version, he's been there for years, if not decades. Right? And like we'll get to it in this one, but sometimes it seems like there are other characters that he should be much more interested in based on his backstory. But other than this one, where it's not even official, but it's implied that he's her father, other than that one, what about Christine makes him so infatuated with her? Because as we've seen in some of these versions, she's not like great, right? She's got potential. And she does very well for a chorus girl, but like nobody wants her over Carlotta because it's not like she's amazing and fantastic. So like the whole core concept of this story of him being so infatuated with her, why? It's bonkers to me that didn't even occur in my brain until a version of Christine shot him, which is part of why she's so high on the list, because again, unlike most of these, she fights back, she takes part in the story, she has an active role, she doesn't just let it happen to her. But yeah, just weird. So, there's a big fight, and then we jump back into the future. I don't remember how the segment in the past ends, but something happens. Some version of a fight. So then we jump back to the present. Blah, 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 blah. She's waking up after fainting or being knocked out or whatever by this falling thing. And Robert Englund is there. But he's, not disfigured. And he's like totally chill. Not like being creepy or weird at all. And he's like, hey, you're really talented, blah, 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 blah. And then they end up, I think they like go to his place and he's like, I'm going to change real quick. And then we'll go do something, blah, 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 blah. And then she finds on his computer the music that she sang in the audition that she thought she had discovered in this music library. So she's like, that's kind of weird. And then she inserts a floppy disk into the computer, which starts playing this like MIDI file of it that she can't stop. So she's like, oh no, blah, 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 blah. And so basically he comes out, we see him changing his skin. So we, the audience, realize that, oh, this is still the Phantom. And it's like weird because we go from the 1800s to 1989. And it's like, she can't possibly still be Christine. So it's like, is it like her reincarnated? Is it her spirit brought back? It's not really explained how the paranormal stuff works in this, but she is somehow still Christine, and he is somehow still the Phantom. And he's like, you thought you could escape me, but nothing will, you know, I don't remember what the line is, but it's like, no matter how long it takes, you know, you will be mine. I will get you, blah, 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 blah. And then it's said at one point in the movie that the only way to kill the Phantom is to destroy his music. So she takes all this music, she takes the floppy disk, and she goes and she dumps it in the sewer. And then I wrote down, putting it in the sewer destroys it, huh? And then I think there's some kind of tease at the end implying that he's not actually dead. So I think that was kind of the point, was that they could have picked this up for a sequel, which I think they were planning on, but it didn't do well, so they never did it. So this is an odd one. It's very different, but that kind of makes it interesting in a way. So Phantom gets a 4 out of 6. He's interesting, but he's kind of all over the place. He's doing all this stuff outside of the opera house. We don't really know why he's interested in Christine in particular. He's making deals with the devil that are not going his way. The fact that he can disguise himself and yet he still chooses to mostly remain in the sewer and do stuff from it's just weird, right? It doesn't quite track. It's not quite Phantom. So it's not the worst one, but it's just not classic Phantom. Christine gets a 2 because, as I said, she fights back. She's just not, you know, this one, she's got the pipes. She's singing it like crazy. Whereas this one, you know, it's probably someone else dubbed over. And then Raoul, Richard, whatever his name is, like I said, he only gets the 1 because they could not remember any instances of him treating her like property. So, way to be a decent guy, unless I just forgot something. Overall, I ranked this 4 out of 6. So, you can start to piece together the numbers, right? We got 1 left, and you can figure out what it is based on what's here. But I will say that of all, I mean, I'm pretty phantomed out right now, so it's not going to happen soon. But of all of these, the one that I'm most interested in watching again is this one. As I mentioned, I am interested in seeing this show, but not necessarily watching this video again. But like this movie, I do want to watch again with a little bit more of it, you know, take a step back, get the Phantom out of my head, rewatch it again for its own sake, not taking notes, not comparing it to other stuff. Because it is unique and it is different, and I appreciate that. But it's going to be a while. But that will probably, the next time I watch a Phantom movie, unless it's with a group that specifically wants to watch the musical, that will probably be the one that I watch. So those are my thoughts on the 1989 version. And that's kind of how this ballooned from 3 videos to 1 video. But then when I decided to do this one, I was like, well, might as well make it a whole week, right? And then that's when I decided to add the concert performance also. So those are my thoughts. Feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments. Did you know this existed? Have you seen this? Does the concept of a Phantom played by Freddy Krueger intrigue you? Let me know what you think. But that's what I've got. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for 1 more. Sign up to my Patreon if you want this bonus video. What do you think it is? Comment below. What do you think? I will tell you. It's pretty well known. It's a musical film. I don't know if it's actually a stage musical or not. It would not surprise me at all if it was, but I've never heard of it as a stage musical. I've never heard people talking about going to see it, so I don't know. But it is a musical. It is fairly well-known, fairly popular. It is, I will say, from this millennium, I'm pretty sure. And it's not a Phantom of the Opera, but there are some elements that kind of fit. So let me know what you think it is. And if you want to see, sign up for my Patreon. That'll be up there in line with all the rest of these. So whatever day this video gets posted, this one will go up the next day. So, thank you for watching. Have a good day.